So today I want to talk a little bit about the difference between fear and worry. I think that, for myself at times and then, friends, family, just people I encounter, it seems like these two things are blended together. And there was definitely a point over the last couple years where this was the case for me until I really started to kind of unwind that and think about it differently. This was, with help from a therapist I was working with, at the time, but I really think it's very, applicable overall to anyone. And so just to kind of break it down, at least from my perspective on that difference initially is, worry is about a future event that may or may not happen that we actually have no ability to impact, at this time based on our actions, our thoughts, because frankly, it may or may not happen, right? Like put clothes in the dryer and I'm afraid that the house is going to burn down because the lint in the dryer is going to build up, right? It's not actually making any symptoms, any sounds. I'm not smelling anything. It's just something that I am worried about, right? Where fear would be, it's smoking. I'm starting to hear something different. Need to turn it off. Need to actually spark action. And so what kind of led me to thinking about this, today is really like that concept. I'm going to call it the 5-minute rule, of, oh man, I'm working on this project and I can't get started. So I just start doom scrolling, or I just am kind of stuck in my head on what to do. And so many times, in a work setting, especially, in a remote world or even in the office, it's really starting to move that mouse around, or I'm worried about the perception. So let me just pretend like I'm working, or I'm going to work through this worry to start to get to action, but it's just immediate kind of blocker. And so for me, many times it's about switching to action, right? And so that's really what I want to dig into more today, is not just that difference between worry and fear, but specifically give you all some tools about how I've kind of handled moving past worry. It doesn't mean that it doesn't come back up, but it's really about trying to understand how can I maximize either this moment or the upcoming moments that I have an opportunity to actually facilitate some action and not let this worry kind of cripple my ability to be my best self and to move things forward. So, to start, when I think about it, really there are three main things that I need to do in order to get that worry out. And so the first one, for instance, let me back up. So the three are, I either need to write and I need to get it out of my head and on a piece of paper or a computer screen. I need to vocalize it, right? Generally on more of like a phone call or something of that nature. Or lastly, I need to get it out of my pores. And what I mean by that is I need to move. I need to go to the gym, I need to get outside on a walk, but I need to do something that gets me out of my mind and into my body. And it's been interesting because as I know that that's what I should do, but then there's this thought sometimes in the back of my head of, will I worry about the perception of stepping away from the desk or the computer screen? They'll worry about, well, if I spend time on self-care for this, then am I going to leave some meat on the bone when it comes to work, family time, chores, responsibilities, paperwork, bills, like all of those things, right? And the reality is like, no. It's more likely that if I don't do this, if I don't act on it, then I'm just going to sit there and either go through it at 20% of the pace that I could, or I'm not going to kind of bring my best self. So it's much better to get up and do that thing for 5, 10, 15 minutes, maybe even an hour, right? But when I come back, it's way easier to be focused, to kind of lean back into action, to feel more like my true authentic self, as opposed to this person that's worried about every little thing that may happen, instead of owning the fact that, you know what, if something does happen, I'm equipped to handle that, but there's no sense in spending energy, you know, on worrying about it before that takes place. So, you know, I think that what I kind of started to use is this 5-minute rule. And what that means is, you know, if you're sitting there, whatever you're really doing, if this thought, or that could be a blocker of like inability to write that email, think about how to draw that design, have this conversation, right? But if my mind's on a loop over that 5-minute period, then as soon as that kind of timer goes up, that means I need to get up. I need to do one of those 3 things. I either, depending, and I know that there's, you know, circumstances, you can't always go to the gym and get an hour and a half workout in and sweat it all out, right? Like, it's not always feasible. But maybe I can take 1 minute and do a, you know, for me, like eye movement kind of therapy, right? With a little mantra to help center myself. Maybe the next minute I take and I just write 3 things that I'm thankful for, right? Or grateful for, from a gratitude perspective. These little things, right? So everything from writing things down, in that sense, to a long form kind of journal post that might be 500 to 1,000 words, and I just need to kind of emote or get it out in that manner. And what that is essentially, you know, helped me do is reframe those events, and that worry starts to kind of wash away. And generally, you know, for me, the worry isn't about like the worst thing that can happen. It's about like not being perfect, which is interesting because I've had a fair amount of traumatic events that have happened to me that, you know, help shape kind of who I am and help me build up some tools and resiliency, you know, to different things that come at me. And so I can remind myself of that. And even if this is as small as, oh, is this person going to respond or not respond to me? Or is this kind of post that I'm trying to write, is it going to be an 8 out of 10 instead of a 10 out of 10 or a 6 out of 10? And the reality is that I need to just lean into the concept of doing and putting it out and getting that feedback or trying. And so that worry kind of creeps in, that doubt. So then I'm already kind of manifesting it. And, you know, one of my really good friends had this situation that, you know, happened to him, and we were talking about it. And so I'm going to share it, you know, with you all as well, because I think it's applicable. So he got this new job, and this is a few years ago. But he got this new job. He was so excited about it. But as he started, you know, he definitely had the imposter syndrome. Am I good enough? What's this really going to look like, you know, for me? And so he started going through it. But always in the back of his mind was like, do I deserve this? Where's my kind of standing with the company? You know, I'm successful, but I don't feel like I'm as successful as I could be compared to my peers. So there's always just like seedlings of doubt, right? And so he had some promotions, but over the course of, you know, 2 or 3 years, company had a couple bad quarters, and he was on a list to get let go. And that was really kind of hard on him psychologically. But then when he joined his next company, there was just this constant fear of, I'm not good enough. It's not going to work out. I just need to hold on as tight as possible, you know, because recently married and, you know, maybe a kid on the way and things like that, where all of a sudden he's just kind of spiraling and it's always kind of glass half empty or glass 3/4 of the way empty, instead of necessarily focusing on how do I get that worry out, because when it happens, I can land on my feet. I know what to do. And so, you know, worked a couple years at this next company, and a similar thing happened, right? Very much out of his control, but a restructuring. And so as he got let go from there, from that restructuring, you know, laid off like so many people have had to deal with, it was really a big hit psychologically, and just that kind of continuous toll of, am I good enough? That imposter syndrome. But then at kind of the next place, he was like, fuck that. I'm going to lean in, right? Like there's no more about worry of, am I good enough? Can I do it? I just need to do it, right? I want to actually see if me just putting my full authentic self out there, trying as hard as I can without this kind of doubt or fear of what could happen. Will that really untangle these shackles? And, potentially can I actually manifest the positive? Because it feels like, as he's talking to me, he's saying, it feels like I've been manifesting this, and it's like the exact thing that I don't want to have happen keeps happening, and I keep worrying about it, and it's on a constant loop in my head. And so as he's kind of changed that line of thinking and really, leaned into just action and trying and trusting himself, everything's continued to work out, better, and knock on wood, but not in that situation, again right now. And so much of it was, outside of his control. But I think it's an important lesson that if we just focus on the thing that we really don't want to happen, we are putting too much attention to that. We're thinking about it too much. We're actually making it on the forefront where it might be the most likely thing to happen. So that's one. And then, another thing that I've thought about, and I forget, kind of where I heard this, but it's essentially that we're always closer to the end than we want to believe. And I think that there's some, we can all think about an experience, be like, oh man, I thought it was at the beginning and it was at the end. But what I really think that message intends to do is the next bad thing might not be around the next corner, but it's out there and it's coming. And so when you have the opportunity to be through kind of one trial or tribulation, and in that gap where you can smell the flowers, enjoy a rainbow, go for a walk, maybe just wake up in the morning without feeling that sense of dread. If we just worry about when that next event's going to happen, then all of a sudden we're missing the window from A to B, because life's going to keep lifing, right? There's going to be people that we lose. There's going to be things that don't go our way. But if we spend that time in between constantly worried about what could happen, then we're really doing ourselves a big disservice of not enjoying that period, because we were able to get through something previously. We were able to build on those tools. And that, in my opinion, really ensures that we have the ability to continue to make it through the next event, right? And so I think that, for me, those things were just kind of top of mind today, especially, that worry versus fear. Because with fear, right, it's something in the moment that evokes a fight or flight response. And I think that when that happens, so many times we spark into action mode. And, I don't want to make everything about what I talked about, last episode, but with with the loss of our twin girls, for instance, that was something that I was worried about, once we found out the diagnosis, but continue to try to kind of work through that by enjoying the milestones and moments along the way, because the reality was, if or when it was going to happen, I was going to have to deal with it. We were going to have to deal with it one way or another. No amount of worry or preparation by thinking through every scenario is going to allow me to feel those feelings or get ready for it. So it was more so about being prepared to tackle something head on, but not expend all of this energy beforehand. So I'm coming into that, situation or event at 50% or 25% capacity. And so, I think that it's hard to believe what kind of spurred into action and the ability to, call the funeral home before they were even born, right? To make those arrangements, to be the point person with the family members that weren't able to be there. Some weren't even in the country, when these things were happening. And then to also be there with my wife, but to be present and then to work through it. And if I if I was told that 6 months prior, 3 months prior, that, hey, this is going to happen on this date, it'd be impossible not to worry about it. But I don't think worrying about it or kind of planning in advance would have helped me go through it, because that's truly those times where those moments kind of last a lifetime, and it feels like everything fades away, and all you can do is kind of trust that intuition and that gut feeling. And so and so that was really where I really kind of began understanding, kind of after that point, how I would blend the two together between worry and fear, and also learned a little bit of that with like my PTSD and having flashbacks or images or things like that I'd be triggered about, and kind of recognizing the difference between what's real and what's not. But it all continued to kind of build on each other until that event with the girls. And then that was really that glass breaking moment of like, why are we worried? But I still get worried today. I mean, I was worried this morning about work, about making sure everything's, fit in time wise. Am I hitting all my KPIs and all that, corporate lingo? But it's like, who cares? As long as I feel like I'm doing the best, and I hit that 5-minute rule where it was like, man, you're just going to sit here for the next 2 hours trying to, do these few emails or work on this project. But you got to get out. You got to do something. You got to get out of your own way, because right now you're the one that's holding yourself back, and kind of recognizing that sometimes we are our own biggest enemy. And when that happens, how do we flip it? How do we not just take the easy way out, and continue to sit there and continue to lean into what's happening in our mind, but how do we take those small little baby steps that then ultimately get us to the place that we want to go, right? And sometimes it's as simple as put on those running shoes and go outside and take that walk, and put your phone in your pocket and see what happens after 20, 25 minutes. So what I want to kind of leave you with today is, and I'll kind of wrap it up in this story. So so in the last episode I talked about being in Sedona and doing this guided meditation, and we were it's similar. It's on that same trip. But anyways, we were, after that was done and, just feeling very full, started to walk around the different shops or things like that. And, what I had read, what I had heard is sometimes, like, I'm not the biggest, like, crystal person or things like that, but in these places with immense amount of energy, right? So you have Sedona, you have Jerusalem, you have, all the chakras, across the world. Sometimes that energy can get, I don't want to say trapped, but it can be in material objects, right? It doesn't just have to be like rocks or whatever. So sometimes things will kind of call to you, right? Like you might just pick it up and linger a little longer when you're window shopping before dinner or whatever it may be. And so we're in this little shop and looking around, and they have all these little signs with different sayings and, a lot of homemade crafts and jewelry. And we're just going through this little shopping area. And I like to read all the little, you can't take time with you. So go on vacations. You can always make more money, or, those kind of things. I'm just like, okay, I'm a big fan of any of those sayings, and I might not buy them all, or I don't want them all over my house, but I do enjoy reading them. So we're going through the shop, and all of a sudden there's this little, like, 3x3 kind of mosaic picture with some words on it, and it's a tree and it's a bird on it, and it says that a bird isn't scared of a branch breaking because it trusts in the power of its own wings. And that really spoke to me because of that concept between worry and fear of what if this happens. And the bird's like, cool, if the branch breaks, I'm going to fly. I'll spread these wings and it'll be okay. And so that's one of the mantras, or something that I continuously kind of think about and lean on, because I think it's just so true. We need to give ourselves the credit that we can actually work through these things. We have the tools, the capabilities, the relationships, the resources. And if we just open ourselves up to the willingness to try and to not be afraid to fail, because when the boogeyman comes or the worst thing happens, the sun comes up tomorrow and we figure out how to persevere on and face that day and build from the ashes. And that just reminds me of that bird that's going to spread its wings and fly. So appreciate you all tuning in to another episode and taking the time today. And I would encourage you to, when those feelings start to come up, when you feel that blocker of, I can't think, or it just feels like that anxiety or worries creeping in, and it sometimes might feel like fear, to question it, to ask, am I worried? What am I worried about? What can I actually do about it today? And then if what you can do about it, you kind of have that mental blocker where it's like, oh, I can't have that conversation, or this event's not going to happen for 4 or 5 days. Well, then you got to get out of your mind and you got to get into your body, right? So either write it down, talk it out, or get some movement and get it out of your pores, right? And then come back and see if you feel a little bit better. I'm not saying it's a magic bullet that's going to solve everything, or kind of that magic wand, but I'd love to hear if it helps. So if it does, drop your thoughts in the comments, and I'll be back to share some more stories and thoughts here with you soon. So take care.